So I was watching the show 13 Reasons Why, and honestly, I'll tell you this much. This is gonna get really dark, but if I ever took my life, I think this would be one of my 13 reasons. And honestly, today's story does get really intense and really just embarrassing, so make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because seriously, it means a lot when you guys do. But what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. So today's story takes place back when I was in middle school. It's my grade 7 year, and I remember I was just chilling, doing my own thing one time, walking down the hallway. And I remember when I was walking down the hallway, I was talking to a lot of my friends that were there. Well, friends in quotations, I'm gonna put it in, because honestly, a lot of these friends of mine aren't actually my friends anymore. But at the same time, it was middle school, so who really out there is still friends with their middle school friends? If you are still friends with your middle school friends, make sure you guys comment down below. But basically, I remember what I was doing was I was walking down the hallway with some friends, and basically what ended up happening was I ended up seeing my middle school crush in the hallway and got really shy. Now, I've talked a lot about my middle school crush on this channel, and one thing I gotta say is that no matter what, to this day, she's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, other than my girlfriend. She's probably watching the video right now, so I love you, babe. Anyways, going on with the story though, I remember basically when I saw her in the hallway, I looked at her and kind of panicked. So I remember I ended up hiding behind my friend group and basically kept walking down the hallway. In any way, there was no way I was going to embarrass myself at all in front of this girl. There was no way I was gonna let her see my goofy, loser, uncool side that I had back in middle school. Now, one thing I will say is that I was really insecure in middle school, and don't get me wrong, I feel like a lot of middle schoolers feel this way. But one thing I will say is that if anything came up to me, my middle school crush, I always wanted her to think I was cool. Like, for example, I'd post photos of me going to car dealerships, sitting in the cars that were inside, and basically acting like it was my own car, and post it on Instagram back in the good old days. Very embarrassing, but I mean, let's be real, a lot of us have done that already. And I remember basically one time when I was going to my locker, my middle school crush ended up actually coming up to me. She came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm just curious. There's a new girl in our school, and like, I think she's like actually like kind of into you. I was just wondering, like, have you spoke to her?" Now, I found it really weird how my middle school crush decided to tell me about this new girl in school, and honestly, I totally just ignored her and said, "Oh, like, nah, like, I don't talk to her," acting like I'm playing the cool guy that doesn't actually want her, even though I'm basically begging to have her. And then she ended up telling me, "Okay, whatever," and she ended up walking away. I remember at that point, I remember one of my homies came up behind me and said, "Yo, bro, you ended up talking to her. What'd she say?" "She brought up another girl that likes me," is what I told him. And I remember my friend looked at me all weird saying, "All right, whatever." Anyways, going on, I remember I ended up going to my class that day that I had with my middle school crush and this new girl that ended up coming to our school. I remember she ended up entering the classroom when all the students were sat down, and the teacher walked up in front of the class and said, "Okay, class, so this is our new student. She is here from Romania, so everyone show love and respect, and yeah, take a seat." This girl instantly gets up, walks over to the seat that was empty that was right beside me, because I was sitting in the back of the classroom, and she sat down beside me and looked at me and stared me down and said, "So I was wondering, like, what's your name?" Hi, my name is Bubba," is what I said, and I ended up shaking her hand. I remember when I shook her hand though, my middle school crush looked at me and kind of stared at me kind of odd. Now, I had no idea why this happened, and honestly, like, it was super awkward. So I remember when I saw her looking at me, I basically refused to talk to the new girl in our class because I didn't want her to think that I had any intentions with her. Kind of a smart move, but at the same time kind of dumb. Anyways, later on throughout the class, I remember our teacher ended up handing out an assignment. It was an assignment that we had to do with partners, and basically we had to make a PowerPoint presentation on mythical creatures that, you know, were back then, like, you know, known as myths and stuff. So basically, I remember I ended up choosing my partner, which was one of my homies, but he already ended up finding a partner, so I ended up getting stuck looking around the classroom for a partner. Luckily for me, there was the new girl in our class that ended up walking up to me saying, "Oh, like, do you want to be my partner?" I guess," is what I said. And I remember I ended up becoming partners with this girl. So I remember when me and her were like working on the project and stuff, we ended up having to take it home because, well, I'm gonna be real with you guys, the project was a really big project. So I remember I ended up going home to my place and ended up inviting her over to my house to basically work on the project. And I remember as she came over, she was really excited to come over and stuff, and she was super weird. I remember when my mom opened the door for her, my mom ended up saying, "Oh, she's cute." And then basically the girl literally said, "Oh, like, yeah, like, I hope your son thinks so." Because I remember when I looked at her and said, "Why would you say that?" I ended up seeing the new girl that came to our class was literally wearing like a really cute dress. I found it super awkward and was hoping that this girl didn't think this was like a date or something. I don't know. I don't want her getting the wrong mindset. But basically, she ended up coming into my house and we ended up working in the living room doing our school project. And I remember as we were doing our school project, she kept asking me questions about the school. Like, for example, who's the worst teachers, you know, like who to stay away from, who to be on whose good side, how to get to the cafeteria lineup before anyone else gets there to get the cool ice cream. Okay, that was mostly something I knew, but you know, whatever. And basically, one thing led to another. She ended up popping a question that I did not expect her to ask. She ended up asking me, "Oh, like, just a question, do you have a crush on this girl?" girl. She ended up literally having a photo on her iPod and was legit a photo of basically my middle school crush. I remember I looked at the photo and said, I mean, yeah, like I liked her for a couple of years now. She was pretty cool. And me saying that, I remember she ended up moving her iPod away and looking at me, staring me deep in the eyes and said, why do you like her? Like, what's so good about her? I remember I looked at her and said, I don't know, like she's cute and I've had a crush on her for like the last 2 years. I remember this girl ended up saying, oh, like, then why didn't you like make your move? Because I couldn't is what I told her. And then I kept just working on the project. I remember this girl ended up getting really irritated that I said that and ended up slamming her hands on the table saying, why don't you like me instead? Like, I don't understand. Like, don't you think I'm cute as well? I ended up looking at her super awkwardly and saying, yeah, listen, like, I think you're cool and all, but like, I just don't like you like that. I only like my middle school crush. And also, we just met. I remember when I said that, she looked at me deep in the eyes and said, well, like, that doesn't mean anything. Yeah, it does, is what I told her afterwards. And for some reason, she wasn't taking no for an answer. To the point where I remember she got so mad, she ended up standing up and actually leaving my house without saying a word. I remember my mom actually walked into the conversation and just saw her leave. And my mom just looked at me saying, you know, she's maybe cute, but she's pretty psychotic, it seems. And ended up actually going back to the kitchen, making me a sandwich. Now, I thought this was just the end of the conversation and that's it. You know, like simple as that. Girl realizes I don't like her and I only like one woman, my middle school crush. But sadly, that wasn't the case. Things ended up going for the worse. I remember the next day when I ended up going to the classroom, we were basically getting ready to tell our presentations. And I remember basically for some reason, my partner was there, the new girl, but she kept looking at me in like a most devious way, as if she was going to do something really bad to me or my middle school crush. So I remember I ended up deciding to be the superhero here and basically tell my middle school crush before class started, hey, like, listen, I don't know what this girl's going to do, bro, but I'm just going to say, like, just stay away from her. I remember my middle school crush ended up looking at me saying, okay, I guess. And it ended up going back to her seat. And me, I ended up going back to my seat. And then my partner, aka the new girl in class, ended up walking into the room and sat down. At this point, everyone was doing the class presentations, talking about mythical creatures and stuff. And then one thing led to another. It was my turn. I ended up going up with the PowerPoint I ended up making because, you know, she ended up leaving halfway through while we were working on the project and basically started presenting it. And as I was presenting it, I remember this was the most worst moment ever. We were getting towards the end of the presentation and out of nowhere, this girl decides to come up behind me and pants me in front of my entire class. That is right. She literally showed my eggplant in front of my entire class because that day, for some reason, I decided to go commando to school. Listen, like I said earlier, I didn't make smart decisions in school and this was definitely one of them. I showed my entire English class my eggplant. And the way this happened was the most embarrassing thing. And honestly, I will say this much, my eggplant wasn't even massive at the time. By that, I mean, it wasn't, blood flow wasn't going to, you know what? That's embarrassing. Let's just jump straight into this embarrassing story. But actually, before I do real quick, please make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe. That's all I ask. Just hit that subscribe button. It would mean a lot to me. And on top of that, it would make my life a lot better. So please, I'm telling you guys something super embarrassing. So just click it. Just click the subscribe button. It's free. And honestly, if you do it, this might not happen to you. But other than that, let's just jump straight into this embarrassing story. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba and welcome back to something super embarrassing. So I remember back when I was in high school, I took this English class. It was my grade 11 year and I took grade 11 English. Now, as you guys may know, I'm actually really good at English and I actually ended up acing that class, even though I've done a lot of things that were really questionable. But I think the most questionable thing I've ever done was this one thing specifically. In my English class, I remember we had to write an essay about basically slavery and how slaves ended up happening and basically the origin story of how slavery really evolved over the years and how it ended. And me, I'm not gonna lie to you, it was the most depressing thing ever. Like every time we would sit down in that class and learn about slavery, a lot of the people either ended up started crying or, you know, a lot of people were just being really sad and depressed. And while me, I'm gonna be honest, it was just a really dark and gloomy day every time we went to English class. Now, one thing I will say is that slavery is no joke. It's the same as the Holocaust. It's the same as many other things that happened throughout history. It was just majorly depressing. But one thing I will say is that a lot of people, obviously, in that class don't sometimes take things seriously. Like there's always that one kid in every class that never took things as serious as it should be. And I remember one time in that English class, there was one girl in there that I was actually kind of interested in. Now, the clown in my class that we're going to call the class clown would always make fun of me for liking this girl, but never making a move on her. But obviously, if she's crying about slavery, there's no way I was going to ever make a move on her when she's crying and thinking about her ancestors that were slaves. So instead, I remember one time I was walking down the school hallway and the class clown ended up walking up to me. He walked up to me saying, I heard there's a project coming up for our English class. I think you should make a move on her and like, you know, become her partner. Why are you helping me? Oh, because like, bro, like I'm just looking out for you, man. You already know. And he ended up basically punching my shoulder as if we were buddies, even though I hated hated his guts. Now you guys are probably wondering, what does this have to do with showing your eggplant onto the projector? And I will say this much, you guys will see why. Anyways, going on from there, I remember basically I ended up going to the class that day expecting to get a project, because I don't think that was a lie. At least I hope not. And when I sat in there, I remember I was sitting there and the teacher walked up to the front of the class saying, okay class, so today what we're going to be doing is you guys are going to group up into two, and basically you guys are going to show a presentation on why slavery is not the right thing to do. Which honestly makes sense, because it wasn't the right thing to do, and I don't know how you're supposed to show that in a presentation. Like, what do you just slap on there? Hashtag no slavery? Like, it makes sense. Slavery was bad. I don't know how you're supposed to explain that in depth, but I guess the teacher wanted that to make sure we actually understood the class. So I remember me, when I was sitting there trying to find my partner, I ended up looking around the classroom, and that's when me and this girl ended up locking eyes. And I guess me and her, we ended up looking at each other, smiling, and she ended up standing up and walking over to my desk saying, hey Bubba, do you want to be partners for the class? Yeah, sure, I'm down, is what I told her. And then that's when me and her, we ended up sitting down together, and we ended up actually working on the project. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, when me and her were working on the project, we ended up actually being more flirty than actually working, which is really sad because we were talking about slavery, but I was, you know, shooting the moves on her, and she actually became somewhat interested in me. Anyways, going on though, I remember at some point throughout the project when we were working on it, I ended up asking for her number and basically her Snapchat, and she gave me both of them saying, yeah, just message me later. And she ended up standing up and going back to her desk towards the end of class. And me, I was really excited because obviously it was a way for me to talk to this really hot girl, but at the same time, I was kind of concerned. I didn't know if she liked me as like a work partner, but at the same time, she was being flirty with me as well, saying I had a really cute nose. Like, I don't really know like where we really stood in the terms of actually communicating with each other. Anyways, I remember the next couple of days, we ended up working on the project together, and you know, we would mostly work over online. She never came over or anything, but we'd always just work. And I ended up actually telling her one time, hey, like, why don't you come over and work on the project with me? And she ended up telling me that she had really strict parents, which I mean sucked, but I mean makes sense. A lot of parents are strict. So from there, I ended up basically, you know, talking to her. We would work on the project, and obviously I would flirt with her over the phone. But then it became this one moment where I remember really late at night on the day before the presentation, she ended up sending me a photo of her cherries. Now this was super unexpected, but at the same time, boy was I excited. And I remember from there, I ended up basically taking a photo of my eggplant, and I didn't send it. I took a ton of photos of my eggplant, but honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you, I didn't get bricked up. So obviously me taking a photo of my eggplant wouldn't look good, because who would send a photo of an unbricked eggplant, if that makes any sense? So me having a bunch of photos of my eggplant on my phone and not actually, you know, sending it to her, I ended up getting nervous and saying, damn, those are some nice cherries, which is super awkward. I don't know why I did that. To this day, I still question, why did I say that? You know what? Never mind. Going on though, I remember the next day, I was basically super embarrassed to go see her, but obviously we had the same class together and we had to work on the same project together. And basically me and her, we ended up going into the classroom together, and we ended up sitting down getting her presentation ready. But one thing I realized was that this girl was really distant from me compared to before, when we would talk over the phone and when we would work on the project together at school. I ended up looking at her asking, saying, hey, like, are we good? Yeah, I guess. And she looks away and basically starts, you know, focusing on the project at hand. Then I remember at some point presentations were going on, and basically things got really depressing in the classroom because we were talking about slavery. And obviously, you know, people started crying in the class because, you know, to some people it was a really touchy subject. And then I remember it became my turn and this girl's that I was working the project with, and one thing led to another. She ended up putting up her hand because she started crying really badly, and she ended up telling me that she had to go to use the bathroom, when in reality she just had to wipe her eyes and, you know, make herself look good again. So me knowing that it was our turn, I ended up standing up to the teacher saying, my partner just left to quickly go to the bathroom. Is it cool if we like just wait it out? She ended up looking at me saying, we're on a short time schedule. Is it possible you could just do it yourself and then she can just come in when she's ready? Yeah, sure. So I remember from there, I ended up basically going up to the front of this class, and I ended up plugging my phone into the projector. And as I was giving my speech, I remember I ended up getting a text message over my phone that was from the girl that ended up basically telling me, hey, like, I'll be back soon. And when I got a notification of her texting me, I'm not joking when I say this, the whole class saw it, because obviously it comes up as like a text bubble, like right above. And obviously I was super embarrassed. But at the same time, I don't know why my dumb instinct decided to grab my phone and click on the text message, and it ended up going towards my photos for some reason. And let's just say my whole entire camera roll was my eggplant, my flaccid, massive eggplant at the time. I remember I was super embarrassed and I didn't know how to turn off the projector. So I ended up basically like trying to cover the screen with my jacket. And I'm like, oh no, this is not slavery. Like this is not a part of the slavery like project. And at that point, everyone started taking out their phones and taking photos of my eggplant that were on the projector. I'm not joking. At this point, I thought my life was over. I thought the world was ending right in front of my eyes. And then that's when my crush ended up walking in, seeing my eggplant eggplant on the projector trying to figure out what in the world is going on, which I don't blame her because, well, I mean, it's really weird what just happened. But going on, I remember I started panicking and freaking out, and I ended up basically almost bawling my eyes out knowing that I was super embarrassed. So what I ended up doing was basically fully shutting off my phone, which ended up turning off the thing on the projector, and I ended up running to the bathroom myself and basically started yelling at my own eggplant saying, why can't you be beautiful? Yeah, I yelled at my eggplant, why can't you be beautiful? I don't know why. I was having a hard moment, okay? But anyways, that was basically the day of how I showed my entire eggplant to my entire class, which is really entirely sad. How my crush saw my eggplant at school. So this story does get really insane, but before I do, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. Seriously, it means a lot when you guys do. And let's just get straight into the story. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. So this story, funny enough, takes place back when I was in middle school. You see, back when I was in middle school, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't the most greatest looking kid. Like, I know I had a really weird pubic stash, and honestly, I was just a brown boy growing up. I think that's like the best way to explain it, really. But anyways, I remember one day, this specific day was a special day, because the day before, I remember my teacher told us all in class, tomorrow will be sports day, so make sure you guys wear your team's jerseys. And it was basically sports day. Now, if you guys know what sports day is basically where a bunch of kids basically go to school, have fun, play games, and do sports or stuff relating to sports. For example, like track and field, kicking a soccer ball, so many different things. If you guys do have sports day, comment down below what was your favorite thing about sports day. For me, it was probably skipping class and not actually doing any homework because homework sucks. Anyways, going on with the story, sports day came around and it was finally the day. I remember I woke up and I was actually like really lazy this day. I think it was because I was playing Black Ops 2 Zombies for like, I don't know, all night basically, and I slept at like 5 a.m. and I woke up at like 7:30 just to get ready for school. Yeah, my mom was not happy about that, but I remember waking up and I was super exhausted. Like, I was tired of the tired. You guys have no idea how exhausted I was, but I still got up for school because it was sports day. I'm not gonna miss out on a day where I could literally just do nothing in school. So I remember I got up and I was walking to my closet, and I remember I was going through my clothing. I got my t-shirt, my pants that I needed, my socks. I always wear socks. Feet are weird. And I remember I looked for the one final thing, and that was my underwear. Now, I remember when I was looking for it, I couldn't find any clean underwear. Before anyone says anything, no, I'm not gonna wear dirty underwear. Ew. Seriously, who do you think I am? One of those e-girls on Twitch that sells them? Oh, by the way, I'm live on Twitch as we speak, by the way. I forgot to mention that. Anyways, when I realized I had no clean underwear, I remember I was panicking. But then I remember that, honestly, there was one thing I could do. And guys, don't ever do this, but I ended up going commando. Now, if you guys don't know what commando is, basically going commando is a certain thing that most kids shouldn't be doing in middle school, and a lot of kids shouldn't be doing in general. The only time you do this if you're home alone or you just have nothing better to do. Hell, I'm usually naked when I'm home alone, but going on. The basic way to say what is going commando is basically not wearing underwear. Going out and not wearing underwear at all. That is the definition of going commando. And I ended up doing it. I remember I put on my gym shorts, and I'm not gonna lie, my gym shorts were like one of those gym shorts where it's like really easy to not see through, but you know, like it's obvious of making shapes, and it was pretty hard to hide my enormous eggplant. So yeah, that wasn't fun. But honestly, I ended up going to school anyway. Me being the lazy person I was, I just ended up getting up, going to school, and when I got there, I remember all of us were just kind of hanging out in classrooms, getting ready for sports day. I remember sitting down and seeing my crush, and I remember looking at her while she was looking at me. It was kind of awkward interaction. Thank God she didn't look down at my massive eggplant, because that would have been a bad idea. But honestly, the story does get worse, so let me explain. I remember getting up partway through sports day, and we all ended up going outside to the field. We were all basically like doing these basic things like running and all this stuff and doing all these things. But honestly, me, I didn't participate in many sports because one, I was tired as hell, and two, I'm not gonna run when I don't have any tighty whities on, bro, because if I do, then everyone in my school is gonna see something massive just going side to side. And yes, I am talking about my eggplant, okay guys? Don't be weird. So most of sports day, I remember I ended up just sitting down at the bleachers with my friends, or friends as we would call it. They're mostly just people that help me with my homework. I ended up just sitting down and just talking to all of them about sports day, how fun it was and all this stuff. And me sitting down, not many people would look between my legs, which is a good thing. And then I remember the one thing that I hated most, my middle school bully. God, man, I seriously hate this guy. There's so many problems with this dude that you guys have no idea. Anyways, he was a lacrosse player, and honestly, he was like one of those kids that thought he was super cool. You know, he acted like the cool kid in school. And even though he had blonde eyes, blue hair, and he was like the perfect guy, I guess, in most girls' eyes back in middle school, I honestly hated him. My whole entire gut hated him. And there's so many stories of why. So if you guys do want another story with him in it, trust me, I got many of them. Anyways, one of the main reasons though why I really hated my middle school bully was because he had the same crush as me. We both liked the same girl since the beginning of middle school till the end, and it sucked. I remember me and him would always have random competitions throughout like the school year, but knowing that it was sports day, I guess guess being competitive went up another step. I remember what ended up happening was a lot of the students ended up going to line up for the long jump. If you guys don't know what long jump is, basically it's this thing where you basically run as much as you can and jump into a pit of sand. And you mark the sand and you're like, oh, you jumped this far, whoop-de-doo. And it's kind of just dumb. And I remember my middle school crush ended up lining up for the long jump. Now, me sitting there on the bleachers, I remember looking at my friend and telling him, yo, do you think I can do long jump? And then he looked at me saying, dude, you're literally 5'2". There's no way you can do long jump. And at that moment, I said, screw it. I remember getting up and walking over to my middle school crush, and I ended up lining up right behind her. And as I was lining up right behind her, I was just kind of chatting her up, you know, having a little cool conversation, being cool, you know, all that cool stuff, or at least pretending to be cool. I'm gonna be honest. And I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of covering my like wee-wee or eggplant with my arms somewhat, just so she wouldn't look down further enough. And me and her had a good conversation. I'm not gonna lie, guys. We literally talked about Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, and Lightning Thief. She was a book reader, apparently. I don't know. She was hot, so I didn't really care. And, you know, we were just having a basic conversation. But of course, as usual, the worst of the worst ended up happening. I remember as we were just having a normal conversation with eye-to-eye contact, my middle school bully came up to me. He came up behind me and tapped me on the shoulder saying, hey, what's going on, doofus? And he ended up turning my body. I ended up telling him to leave me alone. And honestly, my middle school crush was kind of like weirded out by like what was going on. So she kind of just turned away and went back to talking to her friends. And I kept looking at him saying, dude, just leave me alone. Like, I'm just trying to have a conversation, bro. And he's like, oh, what are you gonna do? You're gonna shoot me, little boy? Yeah, I don't know. He would make up really dumb jokes about like me having a bomb and stuff because I was brown. Not funny, by the way. Racism's not cool. And then I remember I ended up just looking at him saying, leave me alone. You're so dumb. And at that moment, I turned around and I started talking to my middle school crush again. But boy, do I regret it. I remember when I turned around and started talking to my middle school crush again, and me and her had eye-to-eye contact again, he ended up doing the unthinkable. He said, yo, Bubba, check this out. And as I was just trying to ignore him, Ben decided to grab my pants and pull them down. He literally pantsed me when I was going commando at school in front of my middle school crush, not to mention. Yeah, that was not fun. I was pissed. I'm not gonna lie, guys. I had so much anger going through me that when I had eye-to-eye contact with my middle school crush, I remember I just see her eyes go from my eyes down to my eggplant. She saw my massive eggplant. And honestly, guys, I was so embarrassed. Like, you guys have no idea how embarrassed I was. I think from a scale of 1 to embarrassed, I was super embarrassed. And I remember being so awkward to the point where I was like, and my hands were kind of like in the air, kind of freaking out as my like giant eggplant is just swinging side to side and freaking panicking. And then I remember my middle school crush just looks at my eyes again. And she's like, why aren't you wearing underwear? And I'm like, oh, and I literally pulled my pants back up and I ran away. But I didn't just run anywhere. I ran home. I literally ran 4 blocks just to go home and not look back. I never sprinted so fast in my life. Like, I didn't run that fast during the track meet when it was sports day. Like, I sprinted, bro. I remember my teachers were pissed off, like really mad at me because I ended up running away. And the next day at school, when I went back there, I remember my middle school crush was kind of ignoring me because I don't blame her. She literally did see my giant eggplant, which sucks. But overall, yeah, it was just mortal embarrassment. And honestly, to this day, I absolutely just hate it. And also, screw you, my middle school bully. You know who you are. I know you watch my videos, punk. Anyways, guys, that is basically it for the story. Make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe if you guys haven't already and want more insane, embarrassing stories. And like I always say, fall for more embarrassing stories. Also, I'm live on Twitch. Bye.